So we're absolutely delighted and grateful that you have given us this opportunity to review your wonderful book. I have read it over the last 1 week and it has been absolutely gripping. And also my absolute admiration that you have documented it so beautifully with such diverse point of views, and you sort of bring it all together in this thought of stories we wear or the politics of appearance. And I think the fact that the themes are so diverse yet coming together in a single book, I feel it's like a beautiful social political documentation. So it's like a very, very intense research which has been consolidated into this few small chapters, but very, very deep. And I think it sort of awakened me about so many topics that we see in everyday life, but we don't give it perhaps much thought. And I think it's been really enriching. So yes,
Thank you.
thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
So, Manish, I always like to say that there should be no gratitude in the ecosystem. It's always bounce off.
Right.
It's because all of us do some work that some of us can take extensions or meander here and there like water.
Right.
So, thank you for considering this. I had a very clear intent once the proposal was done. If you possibly reach the epilogue
did.
says the proposal was more difficult than writing the big book, because I wanted to tell my publisher a way that I'll bring these disparate ideas in a link of appearance. However, to connect this, I tried to bring a road which is Kartavya Path, the electorate which is through wearing politics, a fabric which is khadi, a place where all of us jumble together, which is the airport, a brew which is metaphorical about India in transition, which is coffee. Definitely one story about the body and beauty, and that's Masaba, because it intersects in very meaningful ways with Instagram, and I've called her the love child of Instagram era.
Yeah.
Then about what happens if we lose our face and beauty and body. So that's scarring in the fire exit. Greenwashing, that comes closest with my awakenings and disappointments in fashion. The devil wears green, because there's so much sustainability talk without the worth that goes with it. And finally, last rites, which is death. Death also, again, a metaphor, not just the death of the body, but of several ideas, like a manual scavenger's death,
That's right. So actually, now that you've summed it all up, I think this is exactly the thought which is going on in my head, and therefore I decided to not leave any of the chapters, because every chapter leaves you with a lot of information but a question always. So the first chapter, which is your Kartavya path, and it has these really beautiful references about you referring to it as a phytopath, or you referring to it as somewhere even the social status comes into play, because you see different diverse people, and through what they wear, they communicate as to which kind of social status. But I was just curious to know that while you sort of explain that it also is about the political power and a stage which is set for, sort of stage for power. But I was curious as to why you did not choose any other location in Delhi, like a Jantar Mantar or a Lodi Garden, which are also places where people come together and they meander. And why just Rajpath? So what was your connection with it, and what made you choose that over others?
So one was incidental. I started walking on Kartavya Path during COVID because gyms are shuttered, and I am exercise addicted. I'm dependent on exercise to keep my life going. So I discovered several things. One, you see this book because it's symbolic at several stages. The word Kartavya, it's an अनोखा वर्ड. इट्स आपको अपना कर्तव्य निभाना है. राजपथ का कर्तव्य पथ में टर्न होना was very symbolic for me. There is perhaps no other 2 kilometer precinct in India, forget Delhi, जहाँ एक तरफ अमर जवान ज्योति है, which is a martyr's memorial. There is the India Gate, which is a memorial of all kinds, which is a tourist destination. It is the symbol for pollution. Crime जब दिखाया जाता है, दिल्ली में protest दिखाई जाती है, you get that visual. It's on a stamp. And on the other side is Raisina Hill, the house of the president, which is Lutyens' Delhi. which
True.
was built by Lutyens. It has a colonial hangover. बीच में 2 किलोमीटर है और यहाँ आपको चाय वाले भेलपुरी वाले in the
All
evening it is Dilli
stratas.
Darshan,
Right.
all stratas. There are Saucony sneakers wearing elite athletes in the morning.
Right.
There are helmets. There is romance.
Right.
There are selfies being taken. सभी लोग मैंने जिनसे भी बात करी they said we take one selfie with the Raisina Hill at the back and one selfie with the India Gate at the back.
Right.
पूरी कहानी हिंदुस्तान की पावर्टी प्रिविलेज पोल्यूशन पॉलिटिक्स वहाँ मौजूद है. I could not have found this anywhere,
With
even
this
in
kind
Lodi
of
Garden. This kind of
expanse.
expanse and the history that is locked into it. Uh, ये जो पेड़ हटाए गए and they were taken to Badarpur Park when the thing was being redone also shows how architecturally the government is trying to slightly change the signature of Kartavya Path. सिर्फ नाम नहीं बदला है. So a red stone filing has been done.
Right.
Lights are new. एक food court आ गया है. तो आम आदमी भी है वहाँ और आपकी president भी है.
Yeah.
That kind of complex
Confluence
interplay,
of, yeah.
confluence was not available
Right.
anywhere. And I discovered it while walking up and down and up and down. Traffic is stopped. You can, only if you have a VIP sticker or you are a CISF or a police bus. Otherwise, you can't drive anymore on Kartavya Path.
Right.
So I thought it was quite unique in that sense.
Sure. No, no, and that's where I think you also introduce a lot of your characters who we then
Yes.
keep meeting through the book. So your next chapter takes us to the wearing of the politics, and of course you start with an example of Indira Gandhi, who I think epitomized the fact that the way she sort of, and I think in your own words, Indira Gandhi wielded her sari like a bulwark and a form of diplomacy. Short hair, plain white blouse, Rudraksh beads, handlooms, cultivated elitism in the guise of decolonized simplicity. And I think that was just a master stroke, that taking something so humble, but she sort of took it to the world stage and sort of made it so strong a look that so many people actually sort of started to respect her only for that, apart from, of course, whatever, where politics was divided, but there was nobody undivided about her look and statement. And then you, of course, refer to Modi and his blue jacket and how blue was so significant of the new India. Or you talk about how Priyanka has taken this look from her grandmother, or how Rahul wanted to show himself as somebody on the go in a polo and sneakers. So I think, in a way, these are wonderful examples which tell us that how politicians have actually used appearance to communicate a lot more than words or action. But my question, which remained unanswered at the end of it, is that do we really need more of it? Because, at the end of it, politicians are for the masses, and the masses need to consume them in some kind of a space and form. And therefore, do we really need more statement from them? Or is this an overkill, or is this enough? Or I was left with that sort of a query in my head, and I would love to hear your conclusion on that.
Right. So, since you asked about Kartavya Path, I deliberately end the story Kartavya Path at Raisina Hill.
Right.
And the next story, which is Wearing Politics, starts with the swearing in, the third swearing in of the Narendra Modi
That's right.
government
Yeah.
inside President's house.
So like a
So it's
linkage.
literally वो
Right.
उसी जगह पे एक खत्म होता है
Right.
और दूसरी शुरू होती है. And this idea, your question, whether this is enough, do we need more statements, or it's going to be an overkill? I think in political statement making, I see an overkill. I see an overkill primarily from the saffron brigade, from the BJP idealists, because the insistence of the lotus on the safas and lotuses on saris and the wearing of orange and the dousing of jeeps in the tricolor during the elections and all, there was an overkill of statements. These used appearance, they used garment, they used fabric. They did not leave any stone unturned to tell us where they came from.
Like a visual cue.
Visual cue.
Yeah.
It was like a visual theater, performative theater of a very invigorating kind. What I'm trying to say through this chapter is, why do politicians only dress with the India of the past, which is kurta, pajama, bandi, safa, different kinds of sherwanis, constantly driving allegiance to their party and to the nation through their look, whereas the electorate wears tattoos and trinkets and skirts and modern sneakers and gender fluid garments. Even during the election rallies, I found people looked quote unquote modern. Railway
Right.
stations are shining, as one journalist says. Airports look different, but नेता आपका पुराने जमाने के लिए लगता है, because the communication between the neta and the janta is nationalism.
So they sort of connect that,
They connect that, and they see
forcefully
that
connect
as an
that sometimes.
only communication
Right.
visual strategy, which befuddles me.
Right.
And so there is an overkill of it, so much that you can't just imagine a neta who
Would look like us,
just
like
look like
commoners.
us. Like,
Yeah.
रोज आप काम पे क्यों नहीं जाते हैं without carrying the lotus in your hand?
Right.
So that is the purpose of the chapter. And then they refuse to give any interviews or insights on dressing and style when they are all fully soaked in it.
So, sure. Then comes my favorite chapter, which is on khadi, and I think the whole dichotomy of whether it needs scale or whether it needs that purity and precision that we have always known it for, and I think that's the conundrum that you are also straddling in that chapter. However, there is also this whole control that has been limited, and therefore people's hands are tied. Even the original practices of handspun are hardly seen anymore. There is something which is called an ambar charkha, and there are so many variants. But I think between the two, um, like if I was to say that I would rather go for the purism there and not the scale, but then if you don't go for the scale, then of course it means that the whole purpose would be lost, because it is, the vision was always to generate livelihood through it and also more usage. So how does one really follow through this? And in my head, there is also perhaps a need for having an end-to-end vertical, so that there is something which can be controlled from the beginning of the end till the beginning, and then go on till the end, till the time it gets marketed. And that, I think, that flow is what is missing, because each part is being handled by different people, and therefore that much more confusion. So your thoughts again?
You are absolutely bang on. That's what is happening to khadi. Disruptions. Suddenly there are signings with top designers. There was once upon a time a Rohit Bal.
Very staggered.
Then came then
yeah.
kuch nahi hua. Rohit Bal exited. Then there, no explanations offered. That chapter died. फिर एक दिन उठे, फिर Ritu Beri, फिर थोड़ा सा रीना ढाका. Then this and that. And I can give several examples which are in the book. The question I want to ask through this is scale more important than its image? I would say it is, because only scale will democratize khadi. It will bring more earnings for the spinners. It will give it more recognition in terms of कि हमारे पास एक चीज है. मुझे सिर्फ एतराज फैशनाइजेशन से है.
That's right.
So when you fashionize, the synonymity of the runway, the styling, the hair and makeup, the seasonal drops, that's not what khadi is about.
It's about simplicity.
It is about its aura, holds in its simplicity, which Indira Gandhi in the previous chapter in a manner held. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi made it the biggest marketing campaign in the world. The biggest cloth campaign in this world is khadi.
Right.
It came from the roots. It came not because it was styled. So it's all very well for the government to scale it up, to price it however they want. But why should it be styled with boots and jackets and leggings and curly hair or straight hair or short skirts or long dresses, and all? That kills it. So when we fashionize it, we are losing the story. That's the scaling back that I am suggesting or arguing for. I'm nobody to suggest. I'm arguing for as a journalist, not it scaling up in terms of the numbers it provides, or the experimentations on the ground, or the inclusivity of spinners.
Right. I think that's what I expressed it more as a purity, and I think
Yes.
you're saying simplicity. So they're
exactly
sort of,
the same.
same thought, because they both need to have to finally show khadi in its true essence.
That's
and
right.
not really fall for the trap in
Yeah,
a way.
yeah.
Like a fashion trap of all this.
The fashion trap.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, we democratize fashion to the extent that it starts embracing khadi, which it is not. It's still about sponsors and booze
Right.
parties and save the date and a
Right.
showstopper,
Right.
and it needs a destination. So those traps kind of weaken khadi.
Weekend. Yes. Right. Then comes your chapter on the CISF, and of course, with the airport look becoming the buzzword and also now dying out slowly. And I think you talk about the exhaustion in that as well as to how stylists are dreading to now talk about airport look. But I think in all this stage that is set in this entire gamut of how they want to be seen, how they are seen by people who have to sort of face them every day, I again was left with one question, and I as a co-passenger, I see this, like I travel 20 days a month and I go through this frustration of how people are trying to express something not so relevant in a place which is supposed to be a public space. And I think if you in your entire research came across a passenger's point of view as to how irritates them to actually be able to just sort of not avoid this whole drama being performed.
So I deliberately weeded out a passenger's point of view while I had spoken to several frequent flyers, etc. And people had inconsequential things to say.
Okay. Hmm.
It seemed to me that once I inverted the lens and I was looking at it from the CISF perspective and the surveillance cameras, and then incidental passenger here is a celebrity manager called Maddy Amrutkar,
Okay.
who you find in the
That's
chapter,
right.
who also travels with these people
Hmm.
और उनके bags and everything उठाता है. And the regular passenger, people like you and me, they have been confined into more matching luggage is selling.
Right.
You have instances of that. There is a therapy room at Bangalore airport. There is a museum at Bombay. And I have tried to confine passenger views into those observations, because I met somebody at Bombay who said, I only want to travel from T2 Bombay when I'm going abroad to see the
The
artifacts.
artifact.
You
Yeah.
know, things like that. उससे छोटे छोटे insights मिल रहे थे. Deeper I was not able to get unless I came to you and said,
Yeah.
would you like to share your airport this
Right.
thing with me? That I didn't want to do. I didn't want to dislocate from my reporting center.
That's right.
So I could have planned easy, they were easy interviews. I got several. I was not finding of consequence. So I left that view and thought, if it comes up in discussions or in
Yeah.
reviews,
So
I
it was
will
just my
answer it. No, that
curiosity
you
that
are
made
right.
it. Yeah.
Because there are many travelers, everybody is a traveler. So they are thrown in, but they are not from the specific point of view,
That's
which
right.
was some attempt to do.
Right.
And I didn't even approach a celebrity.
The middle chapter is called Bareli Ki Barfi, and I think it's one of the most poignant chapters because I think it's also a comment that is very close to my heart. And I think what you show there about how a woman is with all her grit and determination, but still struggling to find. And I think you use a very beautiful word called ethical discomfort when you meet such characters. And I think that was a really insightful experience for me as well. I also agree that the social media is the one which has sort of made people realize, and also the more they see it, the more they can be it. But I think, just like you also say in the chapter, I also miss the gray characters because I think we have so many typecasts. And again, taking going back to the stories we wear and the politics of parents, I think we judge people a lot by their appearance. Just because somebody is in a sari, we for the longest time thought that they were not modern, and then suddenly now it has reversed, and now anybody who's in a sari is like making a tall statement. So these are all typecasts, and this fluctuation is very sometimes very discomforting, because why should appearance become so much overwhelming that the actual personality is lost? And I think the beauty is in this gray character where your sometimes your appearance should not be all about what you are inside. And I think this is what women still continue to struggle with. And I think it's very beautifully put in the chapter. But if there's anything that you would like to add on whatever I just said in terms of how grayness needs to be sort of also worshipped, or lack of any other word. So yeah, I'd love to.
So grayness, that's a very, very insightful question. Thank you for that, Manish. uh, Grayness needs to be accepted is where we need to start, because ये जो बाइनरी होते हैं, अच्छी औरत बुरी औरत, बहुत जल्दी सबको सूझते हैं. बहुत सारी चीज़ें आर एसोसिएटेड विद अपीयरेंस एज वेल.
Right.
However, what stuck with me in this chapter, Paromita Vora, the filmmaker, verbalized it, is what I was finding. Everyone I met wanted attention to themselves, not just because they were pretty or good or they could cook well. And Paramita Vora says, मेरी तरफ देखो, मैं भी कोई कुछ हूँ.
That's right.
मैं भी कुछ हूँ ना. मैं क्या हूँ? मैं प्याज काटती हूँ. मैं गट्टे की सब्जी बहुत अच्छी बनाती हूँ. यूट्यूब पे आया हुआ कुकिंग क्लास. मैं तोता पालती हूँ. These are not activities that are exceptional, that may be exceptional, or they are contributing, let's say, to the cultural and economic stories of India. But these are stories that need to be heard to say, I am someone. मैं नहीं देखोगे मैं प्याज काट रही हूँ, गला काट दूंगी. The arc really jumps, that I'm going to strike attention to my selfhood through by hook or by crook. That's literally the crook coming out. That आप देख ही नहीं रहे हैं, बजाय इसके कि मैं क्या कर सकती हूँ, how good I
Right.
am, so I will do anything. And that anything means Visa, that girl, she keeps complaining about false complaints about her husband,
That's right. Yeah.
to the police station, saying कि मैंने लंगड़ा बना दिया है उसको. But there are many of these are, I'm not being heard. Don't box me. And then they come out through Mahi Ji, the Adivasi rapper, through
Right.
Priyanka Parashar, the former mint photographer who's now with United Nations. And she says कि बचपन से ही मैं बुरी, I became this bitch because when I was running on the playground as an 11-year-old, my grandfather says तुम्हारी bra कहाँ है? तुम्हारी माँ ने तुमको पट्टा नहीं बांधा चेस्ट पे.
Yes, sir.
एंड सो शी सेज कि बुड्ढे का दिमाग खराब हो गया था, तब से मुझे समझ में आ गया दिस इज हाउ आई एम गोइंग टू बी लुक्ड एट. And so she says, I'm
So
a
they're
bitch.
compelled to take an extreme way of
Way
sort
of,
of
because grayness, the moderation between the two, as you rightly say, between the black and white is not accepted. There is no place to it. कि ठीक है वो गुस्सेल भी हो सकती है, उसका मूड भी खराब हो सकता है. She may not be temperamentally nice, and she is a great cook, and she can be an extraordinary mother. So the grayness and the badness is being pushed now.
I think this beautifully explains as to how all your, for lack of any other word, the black characters come out as extreme. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's what OTT also has picked up. It's also because there is a clear segmentation issue, which many people who work in television have argued, that women are the majority viewers. If you don't create content only for women who are changing, then you're not getting your audiences right. Advertisement has moved, and those shifts. But in real life, it's in fact a lot more stark.
Right. And for all purposes, Sahitya as well as films truly are Samaj ka darpan. So
Yes.
what you see there is what will actually either has happened or will happen, kind
Yeah.
of a thing.
Yeah.
So your chapter on brew is really, really interesting, but it brought to me three really strong points. I mean, I shouldn't say strong points, but just thoughts which came to me. One, you mentioned that, I'm also from the north of India, and I think I remember these long, leisurely breakfasts when coffee used to be an occasion. So, it used to be like on a holiday, then everybody would sort of end a long breakfast with a coffee, and otherwise, chai was the more common thing, which is like given more as any time of the day. Secondly, it struck me that I think we Indians had been forever sort of, other than the south of India, I think we were trapped in this whole Nescafe. And I think the Nescafe did not let us explore beyond because it came as an easy packaged coffee, and therefore the exploration sort of ended on that. And again, I think it's a North Indian phenomena. And the third thing that struck me was that is it also somewhere that chatting over coffee versus chai pe charcha or versus just a chai adda, I think is like the new thing. It's like something which is more trendy, more cool, and therefore this displacement has also happened, because otherwise how did our taste buds suddenly change? So there were three pointers, which is like the intimate and from the social point of view, that I felt that the chapter covers it really beautifully. But any of the 3 points that I said, do you think, like, I think the third point is something which I didn't see in your narration, but it came very strongly to me as one of the thoughts as well.
Yeah, Veer Sangvi says in the chapter that coffee is like ramen noodles.
Right.
Everybody
Yeah.
should, everybody must have it, not because they like it,
Right.
because of other reasons. Some reasons have to do with marketing. Some reasons have to do with being cool. And now I've realized that the reason I chose coffee, one is there is seeping through in Indians some great recognition of coffee. Uh, the better coffee, the filtered coffee, where are the seeds, how are they sourced, how it is being brewed, and the various aromas that are linked with it, the various experiences and geographical regions being linked with it. So it has become representative of several ideas that are seeping around our creative and cultural economy, especially cultural economy.
Right.
Within that, I found Manoj Kumar of Araku's arguments that a coffee farmer, that experiment of Araku, that a Naxalite can be turned into a millionaire coffee farmer, and should you follow this model, you can step up towards eradicating poverty in other parts of the world. Chocolate farmers, the at the bottom of the farming chain are coffee and chocolate
That's right.
growing farmers. So there were these potent ideas that were brewing inside the coffee story. I also have psychoanalysis there. So Lorelei Lippi, who is the
That's right.
protagonist, she draws a coffee wheel of life. Now, actually, there is a coffee wheel.
Very
If you
interesting.
might have seen, if you go to a coffee shop or you just go to the coffee board website, you will see a coffee wheel in various colors and various aromas and various names. And
Right.
it moves from cinnamon to grape to grandma,
That's right.
to stark wood to dead wood and all, and it brings out so many emotional connects. So the transition to some extent is because of the cool value,
Yes.
but I saw a lot more investment in coffee cafes than chai bars,
Right.
investment in terms of decor, in terms of the flooring,
So
in
trend and
terms of
market
the
side.
trend and market side. So it's trending, but it has some deeper stories that are brewing there, and I wanted to bring those to the fore. But at the end of the day, as Veer Sangvi says, I asked him, can you write a rude coffee column? And he says, I don't know what to say after 12, 13, 14. So
Right.
that's the story. It's not a great big story, but something is brewing there.
Yeah, but I think you're also right. I think the coolness is also coming from the consciousness about
Yeah.
it. So if there is a strong consciousness story, it's
Yeah.
almost about discerning and impactful. So therefore,
Yes.
I think the coolness is not just in the taste, but
No.
the story behind it.
Yeah. And
Yes,
the
right.
trendiness. Also, as you work in craft and several organic ideas, the Araku red,
Yes.
which they are going to patent, is a specific deep beautiful red. Uska brilliance is different from sinduri red. It's not the cherry you get in India. So the Araku cherry ka red jo hai wo itna anokha hai that even that needs a mention here, and that's also a sign of its purity.
Right. So, your chapter on Mazaba is very insightful again, and I think you know her now more personally for me to now just put a point of view on it. But the thought that just came to me is that while Masaba is obviously, without taking any credit away from it, I think she's a combination of how she has used smart marketing, her own intelligence, but I think a lot of it is also the stage was set for her because of her genes, as well as because of such great parentage. And I always think that somewhere, you get that authority and strength from what your parents have done. And I think what Neena Gupta did was so path-breaking that I think the stage was pretty much set for her to, sort of take on that same. And of course, she struggled and then
Yeah.
she reached this point. But I think how much would you and the thought that really emerged to me was that if there was somebody else who had the same kind of grit and strength and intelligence, but not the lineage, then she has no chance at all to become what Masaba has shown. So I think somewhere I don't know to call it equal both, or do you think one over the other?
I think her privilege is above her who she is. there's definitely a privilege there. And a person who was not under the genetic crucible of Vivian Richards and Nina Gupta, exceptional instances of their own
Exactly.
personalities also. Masaba's chance only by herself in this industry with her level of intelligence, experimentation, would have not been as noticeable. I have to say that. She argues throughout, she's quite conscious of it, I found. She constantly argues that she has done something with her privilege and she has doubled it, and she's created what she had because she feels a weight of it. That लोग कहेंगे कि ये तो नीना गुप्ता
Yeah,
और विवियन रिचर्ड्स की बेटी है, इसका अपना क्या है. So she tries very hard, but I think her struggle is not the struggle of wanting to be seen, or the struggle of the success of her fashion design has not been as appreciated as is her love child brand,
that's
cosmetics
right.
brand. The struggle has been with her body
Hmm. True.
because she had these forearms, strong forearms, and as she says, when she started running in school, वो दौड़ती चली जाती थी and then she would look back और सारे पीछे थे.
Hmm.
She had no idea how she ran because she was built like that. And that very strength became big hips, big lips, afro, bum. uh, she didn't want any of
And
that.
that I think she
And
overcame all on her own. Yeah.
the acne, and then the judgment, and then a phase that she was being looked down because she was Nina Gupta's daughter and a single unwed mother. Those, I think, were the struggles.
Right.
Masaba's struggles are not born out of nepotism versus privilege. She is clearly privileged.
Yeah, but I think you very subtly put it. I don't know if that was your intent, but you narrate this thing as to how she managed to get onto a flight with the wrong boarding pass.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that
she
is her
got through.
passage into life also.
Exactly.
So I think that was,
That's metaphorically there.
yeah. So I also sort of
Yeah.
read it and I reread it. So
Yeah. Thank you for noticing those details.
yeah. So your next chapter is on fire exit, and I think your opening line, which says "surviving is not winning," I think sums up everything. And this is something which I have felt many a times, that survivors who actually then live with a handicap also, I think it's like many a times they must also wish that they hadn't survived. And I think this particular story, and I really was wondering all through as to how you even did this research, because it must have been really difficult to have seen it all with your own eyes, as well as going deeper into the conversations. And then, of course, this whole aspect of how they are told to look at inner beauty. And I think that also is so true, because when you're not really in that place, you cannot imagine how. And I think these become such superficial words. But at the end of it, what really the question that I was left with is that, in spite of good infrastructure, which you talk about, which sort of takes care of these cases, I wasn't sure if there is enough support from the psychological and therapy point of view. Because you also very rightly say that even the healing is a privilege. And I don't think many of the people actually reach out to therapists on their own, and therefore they struggle themselves. And how much is our medical system actually taking into account the mental therapy here? And I don't know what the answer to that is.
So it's all class based. The more money, the more privilege, the more education, the more networks you have, the better your health insurance, the better is your care in these cases, because care goes on for years. It is immediately casualty and emergency care is available, even let's say to the poor and the marginalized, but the enormity of what they need is denied to them, both systematically and sometimes inadvertently. That's how systems break down. A Safdarjung hospital compared to Apollo hospital, it doesn't even
Yeah,
compare. That's what Dr. Sujata of Safdarjung says, that we cannot offer what a burns victim says needs, and the scarring is for life. Mental health and therapy is not necessarily denied consciously, but there is no reach out for it.
that's
Let us assume if there is reach out. That's why this chapter has so many statistics. I have cited so many people burn and children burn every year, vegetable vendors, chemical workers, it's ridiculous that they do not have equipment to safeguard from fixing a fuse. And these people's lives are destroyed. They can barely rehabilitate physically. They are amputated, their limbs are amputated. Some people have no eyebrows. Children are growing up without half their faces. So the physicality and the shrunken psychological this thing out of it needs all kinds of care. It takes a village to heal, as I say. Psychological care, as you rightly pointed out, is not reached out for by the marginalized classes themselves, because they think कि हमें पट्टी करानी है, मरहम पट्टी करानी
So
है,
much more to
हमें
worry
प्रोस्थेटिक
about.
चाहिए, हमें एक लिम्ब चाहिए, लकड़ी दे दीजिए, आंख की पट्टी दे दीजिए, बेटे को जॉब दिला दीजिए, बेटी की शादी करवा दीजिए. It all goes into that basic survival at great personal suffering. Uh, the few who are forced into psychological therapeutic care in government hospitals walk out very soon, because the demands on their psyche are too much for them to manage after the
Right.
scarring of their life, literally. In privileged care, amongst the privileged classes, I noticed there is psychological treatment being offered and being taken. And no full cure is complete without the help of a therapist. And I found several patients, one of who walked out at the last minute of the chapter and accused me of lack of empathy. And perhaps she might have been right. I always say, just because you are a journalist, empathy is not an island by itself. You have to keep negotiating with it, and you may have lost it. And she felt that her story inside the chapter was not empathetic enough, so she withdrew. She had spoken extensively about how therapy was helping.
Okay.
But therapeutic guidance and mentoring is only in the privileged classes. It's
In the
zero in the marginalized classes, and that's where the maximum burn cases and accidents happen.
happen. Then comes your really favorite chapter of mine, which is greenwashing. And I live this every day as to how brands claim and then they don't think twice about it. But I think I love the idea that you say that greenwashing is uh, truly related to, or sustainability for that matter, is truly related to transparency. And I think whoever is willing to go all the way on transparency will, I think, organically then never do greenwashing, because it's like contradiction. So, but I think I also love the idea of being the whistleblower, and I think you being in journalism, are you practicing this every day, and how difficult it is for you sometime to take these calls, because you rightly bring out the fact also as to how much of media is also dependent on advertising. But this struggle, I want to hear from you as a journalist now.
So I am a failed champion, a losing champion of guarding sustainability as an editor and a journalist, and I find it uh, almost impossible so far to be able to navigate and find only transparent brands, only brands or people or platforms which have put out all knowledge on the website for us to research, to find legalities that are, have been safeguarded, to find transparencies, supply chains that are safeguarded. In that, if gender parity has been well looked after, if there is no anonymous child labor or an anonymous labor, if microplastics are being worried about, if it's not fully cotton and cotton is not being grown with hundreds of buckets or
Yeah.
gallons of water, in this navigation of crimes against people, of denials of wage and labor comforts, of the nature of ateliers, of giving credit to people who are doing the right thing, uh, I find it a maze that I'm not able to navigate through the means that we work in. And I have to call myself a failure to be able to also say with the same clarity and conviction that I find the fashion media a failure as well in safeguarding sustainability. And transparency, this is the most transparent I can say to your viewers and to you, to say I'm
Yeah.
unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And being a whistleblower, and that's why at the end I call it a war. It's a war to be waged. We need to wage it on an everyday basis. Every day we need to question our choices as consumers, as makers, as writers, to see हम कुछ कर भी रहे हैं कि नहीं, On most days I find कि मैं मैदान में ही नहीं उतर पाती हूँ. It's so complex. Ernest Vaswani is an alter ego. Ernest is, I was very earnest in childhood and I have always been. Vaswani is my maiden surname.
Okay, yeah.
And the whistleblower types who I see around me, I see in them this earnestness जो कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे हैं.
Yeah, but thank you so much for putting this in so much clarity, with so much clarity, because I think it's music to ears, because I think the whole media is actually just falling for these words. And I wonder that even if they have to find something, they can always find something which is truly out there. Why do they have to claim it with a deeper meaning for which there is no transparency? And like you rightly said, probably there is no data to actually validate it. So I think it's a very
In some
brave.
cases there is, and we try as a platform to investigate before writing. I constantly kill and review stories on sustainability. That's why our content on sustainability is actually thin, because I don't know what to publish.
And I think people have to realize that sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
So what you can truly claim is also
Yeah.
enough for a story. You don't have to
Absolutely.
go beyond.
Yeah.
Last chapter, and I think it's the most poignant of all. Of course, it's about depth, but I think what you have really, it's like a wake up call for me also, because I think it told me that, one needs to actually prepare for death also, because you need to be able to plan it so that people you leave behind don't struggle. And I think when you talk about the death manager, I think it's a area which really needs a lot more attention today, because I think it's a gap which exists where people don't have ways and means to actually handle it when it suddenly just comes over you. And I think, but apart from the entire, again, it's a sort of a stage and there are appearances that you talk about, but I think you became personal also in this chapter. And my question to you is that while you say that, there are things that frightened you, but it must have been really difficult to live with this dichotomy of a father who almost was obsessed with death as a thought. And I think it was his way of uh, communicating that it's about the impermanence and it's also about how one has to be prepared for it. And you mentioned that your mother was somebody who did not want to talk about it because it was almost like you're calling it upon yourself. So I think these were two very contrasting characters that you've lived with. And it must have been really difficult. So, would you like to share something more which you probably haven't touched in the chapter? Because this really stayed with me. This part really stayed with me.
So, my father was melancholic, he was depressive, he was also an extraordinary writer, and he had the force of intellect compounded with his obsession with death. It was very hard to live with him. Um, and I am surprised that I had natural cheer. I'm cheerful person. I would almost, without leaning on to toxic positivity, I have been a positive sound feeling person most of my life. uh, I think I saved myself from the grave uh, disorder with terminal ideas that my father had. And growing up, that was the first I could have spoken on death at age of 12, because so much was told to me and so much was unfairly told to me. And my father was not able to audit or edit that this is a young girl, and how am I bringing her up with ideas of death before she learns about romance and
That's right.
sex, the uh, thanatos,
Wonderful.
and the eros. There is a epoch in life. If
Right.
one precedes the other, it can be extremely confusing, and that is what I navigated through. So to answer your question, yes, it's difficult. What have I not shared in the story? These things have to be asked, because the story kind of blurts itself out in
Right.
spurts, and I've tried to place it there to tell the world that there were these issues, and then cremating them, uh, and doing those things were kind of bringing up my childhood in ways that I necessarily did not want to remember. But I end with the Ghinti, which
That's
was
right.
an award-winning short story that my father wrote. He also asked me to translate it, and he died in this house, in the room next to where we are sitting, with the Ghinti that had fallen off. And that bell rings in my head. almost nightmarishly sometimes. I've been able to deal with it through grief therapy. I have taken grief therapy after my father's passing to understand the motive of death, the leitmotif of death in my life. And that Ginti still tolls, which asks me, did I do enough? When I grew up and I became this person who could read, write, and understand, did I do enough for myself or my father to protect ourselves, the two of us, from this grim reaper that has been staring down at me? I have to confess, in a manner, I have become obsessed with death as an idea, so I read extensively about it, almost with morbid fascination.
Thank you so much for opening up on this, and I hope I have done justice to the book. But yeah, I think if it has piqued your interest, whoever is watching this, I would say that there's so much more that is inside. I have only sort of talked about to pick the curiosity, and I think there is so much in this that one can. And like I said earlier, it's a beautiful social political documentation, which I think can be something which can be referred to 20 years later, and we know how it has progressed from then till now. And thank you so much for this.
Manish, I want to thank you by saying that rarely is a journalist asked questions, and rarely is a journalist asked insightful, nuanced questions, and I feel very privileged. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.